All right, folks. I've been dealing with some of the usual YouTube weirdness going on lately. They've been kind of censoring my channel, but and how they do it is they delist the channel. You can't find the videos that I'm doing. They just kind of disappear. You go to my channel, it says I've never made a video ever, and my live streams, none of them are ever up. There's been no channel activity ever since I started the channel, and which of course, that's bullshit. Anyway, apparently I'm striking a nerve. Damn it. Anyway, anybody that knows anybody or knows anything about what we do over here, and at freedomslips.com and revolution-radio.com. It's the same website. I just set up a separate domain because YouTube has blacklisted the link to freedomslips.com. You can't type it anywhere. If you type it, it just says you can't type that URL. So anyway, we're going to start out. This is Jason Van Tatenhove, who is a broadcaster over here with us, broadcast host with us here at freedomslips.com and with the Patriot Report, and we do his show occasionally here on the live stream as well, as long as we got everything organized well. Jason's going to be late on the show tonight. He's still up at the mountains training. He's about 2 hours out from getting home. We have Joe Rice will be with us. We have Tom Davis will be with us. All these people are ranchers and farmers and busy people, and they're taking time out of their day. And organizing this many people has not been an easy task for any day, but we're getting it done. Adrian Sewell, I think, is going to also be joining us. This old Marine will be joining us at some point. I'll be pulling people in as we go. But first, this interview with Michelle Fiore from Jason Van Tatenhove, Liberty Brothers. I'm going to run that first, and then I'll go ahead and call Joe, and we'll get started on this huge discussion of what the hell is going on. And I hope you guys were paying attention to what the hell was going on in Phoenix today and New York. It's just nuts, and that's why I titled this "America is on Fire." So let's wake up. There was this. I said it earlier in our chat. You can think about things in all kinds of different ways. You throw a carrot in boiling water, it goes in hard and comes out soft. You throw an egg in boiling water, it goes in fragile, comes out hard. But you throw coffee beans in boiling water, it changes the water itself. Be the coffee bean, folks. Let's get busy. So off we go.
Folks, this is Jason Van Tatenhove with Oath Keepers Media here with Michelle Fiore, who is part of the COWS organization, one of the representatives there in Las Vegas, outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. And thank you for joining us here on Oath Keepers Media. We got some really important stuff to talk about today. We've had a lot of things happening, and you've just been right there in the middle of the mix. First off, I want to start by saying thank you for doing everything you're doing. I honestly believe we've saved lives in what we've done with getting people out of the refuge and the part that COWS has played in that. And just there has been a silver lining to all of this, and that's that I truly believe lives are saved. So thanks for all you're doing. I definitely appreciate it. I know other people do as well.
Jason, there's so many of us, I have to tell you, including yourself and including the Oath Keepers, including everyone out there that played a key role in this. The information, and as we get information out and as we make sure that none of our cowboys fall through the cracks, is very important. I will tell you, as we are interviewing and we're putting this out there on social media, that's truly what saved those four. Is if those four were not live streaming, I believe in my heart that they would have been dead.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to our first topic, and that is we finally have some good news coming out of this situation with the attorneys. We now have some pretty high name attorneys coming in. Tell us a little bit about the background story there, how we got connected with these guys, and what they're going to be doing to help our guys out.
So a couple of weeks ago, because it takes a lot of coordinating, especially to get signatures from people that are detained behind bars. So a couple of weeks ago, I got a phone call from the president of one of our unions here that is a national organization. And I thought to myself, I wonder what this is about, And so I met with him, and I'm very grateful that they are looking to step up to help our political captives, because they truly understand that they protest and understand when union teams protest. I mean, they'll stop traffic. They'll, it's kind of like a tough protest. So when they saw our cowboys camping in the middle of nowhere, not, arguing or yelling at people, and all of a sudden 40 of our cowboys are in jail, they said, we better step this up, because obviously the federal government is looking to shut down our First Amendment right, which is freedom of speech. And there is a disparaging disadvantage there. There is a ton of civil rights that have been violated with all of the cowboys being detained. And the unions, the labor unions, are stepping up. So our first meeting was basically, I'm chored with now going and getting all of our cowboys that are rounded up, signing a specific interest card for the organization. And then once we get them the interest card, now out of 40 cowboys, I've gotten about 20 signatures so far. Because I had to fly to Portland. We've got people in Idaho. We've got people in Nevada. And I'm talking about our detainees. So we have people everywhere. And so I'm trying to reach out to other people in other states that can go and do a paper pass. That's what it's called, a paper pass visit with our detainees, to have them sign it. And then, so right now, most of them have public defenders, and we don't want them letting any of their public defenders go. However, as we get into and closer to we need true criminal attorneys that can defend our Constitution and understand what's happening. So we have a few great people coming on board. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Larry Klayman. He's coming on board with Cliven. He did a whole bunch of work in the past with Judicial Watch. He has some famous cases out there. And Larry wasn't here on Thursday when they didn't release Cliven, because he was burying his dad in Florida. So there's a lot of people coming online. I met with a California attorney. I won't say his name yet because he's not on board, on last Thursday before I went to Portland last Friday, to give him the scenario of the case. And without a shadow of doubt, he totally sees that the federal government definitely does not act in a lawful manner, and he can definitely see the wrongdoings here.
Well, that's good news. How can people, if they know these guys, if they've got contact with them and can do that paper pass, how can they get a hold of you and get plugged into that?
Well, they can call me directly at my office, which is 702-210-8460. And again, it's 702-210-8460. They can call me, and then we can coordinate, because it's very difficult to constantly fly around, but it's not too difficult to get it done. So that's what I'll say. We have to get it done, and we have to get it done fast.
Absolutely. Well, and to be clear, that's going to be free representation for them, right? They're not going to have to pay for that.
So Tuesday, I go back and I meet with their board. I show them the cards that we have, and then from there, I've sent them some of the indictments that I was able to pull up, and then from there, they're looking at, I don't want to say unionizing the cowboys, but definitely pulling together to make sure that our voices as Americans are not shut down.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on. The cows have been in the press quite a bit lately, and not all of it is portraying things quite accurately. I was wondering if you could kind of talk about some of the bad presses that's been out there, and really let's shine the light of truth on it. Let's kind of let people know, because you guys have been instrumental in brokering peaceful resolution. You've really put your money where your mouth is, and we're there, boots on the ground. And then when you weren't there, you were plugged in and a part of it. Everyone may not know the behind the scenes workings, but I certainly do. And you guys have been there since day one. Let's talk a little bit about this demonization that's been happening. Of course, here at Oath Keepers, we're very used to that happening. We know that it's because you're doing some good work is really why they're targeting you. So tell us a little bit about that.
So anytime anyone, Americans, and especially elected officials that actually have the capacity to write laws that will actually have consequences to unlawful law enforcement, we're going to get attacked. And that's basically, COWS, which is the Coalition of Western States, looks to represent the citizens across the nation. We're actually enrolling some Eastern legislators as well. And we basically fight tyranny. And that's when you have to, that's when, the rubber meets the road, shall we say, is because they don't want any of us pushing back. And there's not enough elected officials that will turn around and say enough is enough, because most of the time people worry about their next election and not our next generation. That's our biggest problem with some of these electeds, and that's what I'm going to say to your group, to everyone that watches this, is you really have to get in touch with your representatives, from your sheriff to your state reps to your federal reps, and see if they will stand for you, or if they're just an elected official just to rub elbows and be in the elected official club, because those are the folks you want to work hard, you want to get your boots on the ground, and you want to get them out of office.
Okay, well, we last but not least, we're getting news of a new round of indictments coming down over this weekend, and I'm going to work hard to get this out tonight so that we have this information getting out there over the weekend when it's happening. Tell us a little bit about this new round of indictments that you found out about, how you found out about it, and who it's going to include possibly.
Well, basically, they're looking at anyone that was in Bunkerville in 2014 with a firearm. So the Nevada prosecutor that was in Oregon last week told Oregon attorney that today, Friday, they would be Friday, March 18th, through the upcoming Tuesday, they will be doing another mass, using that term mass, M-A-S-S, amount of arrests with anyone that was in Bunkerville with a firearm in 2014. And non-coincidentally, I got a call from a gentleman that was in Bunkerville in 2014, and the FBI stalked him for, I guess, a few weeks, stalked his house, his 12-year-old daughter was home, and then pulled up right behind him. And he was polite, and he invited them in. He was cautious, but I advise everyone that's listening to this, if the FBI or the police want to question you, absolutely not without your attorney. A lot of us want to be friendly, and we want to help because we don't have an issue with law enforcement, but their intention is to entrap, and their intention is not pure. So I would highly suggest no one speak with the FBI or the police without your attorney, because they do not have good intentions at the moment.
Absolutely, and that unfortunately, that's a large group of people. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of people there during that big standoff.
There were like 2,000 American patriots there at one time.
And that, to me, seems like a Rubicon that they're crossing. It's definitely going to change the game. I know there are a lot of people that have talked about what's going to happen if they were to cross this line in the sand, and I sure pray that they decide not to do this, because it's definitely going to change the game up.
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to add before we let you go?
No, Jason, I just want to thank you, and I just want to make sure that no American allows themselves to be beat down, suppressed, or fear our government. Because the moment we fear our government and stop preparing to defend ourselves, is the moment of weakness, and that's the moment of conquer. So I'm just going to say to our fellow Americans out there is do not fear your government. That's not the way this is supposed to work. We're law-abiding citizens, and we need to stand our ground.
Amen. Well, again, thank you for all the work you're doing, and please keep us up to date whenever you need to get some information out. We'll be happy to help do that.
Thank you so much, Jason.
All right.
Bye.
All right, so there was that interview. Give me about a second. I gotta get set up for this next show, or the rest of the show, as they say. I'll put this up there so we got some kind of video rolling in the midst of all this. Let's turn that down. Title this up. I have to do this on the fly. Sorry, man. All right, so anyway, I'm sure everybody saw what was going on today in Phoenix. That was just nuts. That was nuts. And what's going on in New York with those? All I can call it is a tax. That's just as nuts as everything else. I mean, I don't even know how to explain some of the things that are going on right now. It's like America's on fire. And I'm telling you what, you want an American Revolution? I'm going to tell you when American Revolution will start is if Donald Trump does not follow through with his promises. We know that. I know that. You know that. Let's give Joe Rice a call. This is going to take a minute. I won't put him up live on the screen. This is I'm calling him via phone number, and I'm not going to expose that phone number. It's private phone number, of course. Everybody goes, why aren't you showing this? Well, I don't expose people's private information unless it's okay with them.
Hello.
Hey Joe, how you doing? This is Nighthawk over here at Revolution Radio. How you doing tonight?
Good. How you doing?
Not too bad, I guess. It's been a really hectic day with this protest insanity in Phoenix. I was telling you about a little earlier on the phone, and New York, and that New York stuff could still turn violent. It's not looking like a real good party, but we kind of touched on something and earlier, but before we even get into that, for any of the listeners that don't know who Joseph Rice is, go ahead and let us know who you are and your affiliations, etc.
I'm sorry, you broke up just a little bit in the last part of that. I apologize for that.
Oh, no problem. What I was saying was for our listeners that might not know who you are, because new people are waking up all the time, let everybody know who you are and your affiliations, PPN, 3%, all that kind of stuff, if you could. That way we can roll into this straight on. So.
Yes, I'm one of the founders of the Pacific Patriot Network. I started and still am the county coordinator with Oath Keepers of Josephine County in Southern Oregon. And we had the Pine Mine operation take place here, where we had the two mine owners approach us last April, and they had a situation where the Bureau of Land Management had given them a cease and desist notice without any type of due process, directly violating their constitutional rights. and they asked us for assistance in protecting their rights and getting the Bureau of Land Management to move the issue into a courtroom setting. And we never would have been involved in it if the BLM walked in, here's your citation, here's what you violated, here's your day in court. That's not what they did. They came in and they said, you have to take all of your mining equipment off, you have to take down your cabin, you have to refurbish the mine to its original natural state. And that's not due process. So after about a 6-week situation, they moved it into the Internal Board of Land Appeals, and where that same case stagnates today. They've taken no action almost a year later, and they still haven't made a decision. Well, out of that was born the Pacific Patriots Network, and we became a coordinating umbrella for patriot groups, for the ability of the 3%ers, of Oath Keepers, of Central Constitutional Guards. There's a Patrick Henry. We could all coordinate together and support each other in the patriot movement as these types of situations came about. Unfortunately, as we've now learned, it seems to be weekly occurrences. It's kind of amazing the amount of people that contact us weekly asking for assistance with land use issues. And it always comes down to a government agency or some individual that's exceeding their authority, abusing and violating constitutional rights. So that's kind of a little bit of where I come from and what we're doing.
Well, yeah, exactly. I understand. Actually what's going on out west, as I see it, is the end game of what started. Excuse me. In the Midwest, I grew up a farmer in the Midwest, Indiana. I'm in Kentucky now. I'm still a farmer, but not doing the same kind of farming. I'm doing tobacco and small grain, just with 60 acres here. But I grew up on a huge farm. We had about 9,000 and something acres, I think, on one farm, and about 180 acres on another farm. And I was watching farmers. They started going down in the 70s. What they did. What they used the banks at that time, and the fairly decent going economy at that time, to take apart and destroy the family farm in the Midwest by loaning these people ridiculous amounts of money that they could have paid back if interest rates and stuff like that hadn't went into the roof. And then they started taking these farms, and then the Japanese were buying up the farms. So we saw most of the Midwest fall apart, as in the small family farm, over the 80s, launching stuff like Farm Aid and all that kind of stuff. And, all those were smaller family farms, stuff like that, anywhere from 60 to 500 to 1,000 acres or something like that. And now we see this going on in like hundreds of thousand acres hits out west now. And not just farms, but mines and everything else. I mean, what's your opinion on the timeline of this that really kind of starts back in the 70s with the banks?
No, you're correct. We are seeing in the West, and I think you're correct. If you go west of the Mississippi, we've seen a march across the country to the West Coast where land use and more importantly, producers are under siege. And if you are a farmer and grow, if you're a rancher and produce beef, if you're a miner and produce metals, whatever it happens to be, timber workers producing timber products, the federal government at this point seems to be pushing the ability to access these natural resources, which the foundation of our nation has been built upon, out of reach of the common citizen and the community. If you look at the mining situation, they've gone after the individual miner. And it's a David and a Goliath type situation where, you've got the small miner that's got his plane, he goes out there, works it, makes whatever he makes, sells it, and he continues to do it again. The Constitution guarantees us that right, the pursuit of happiness. Doesn't guarantee we'll be happy, guarantees us the pursuit of it. If that's what the individuals choose to do, they need to be left alone. Let them do what they're doing. They're providing a service to our society. As we look at ranchers, the same thing. They graze cattle. They literally have taken land that was unusable. It couldn't be done for anything else, and they're using the forage on that land to feed cattle that goes to market and winds up on consumers' refrigerators and in restaurants. Timber products, the same issue. We used to cut timber, build America homes, wood products, but now we import our lumber. The resources sit here in the West untapped, unused. That is causing extreme economic strife and crisis in communities in the West, where you had generational ranchers, timber workers, miners. They no longer can work because that land has administratively been withdrawn. Here in Josephine County, a few months back, they withdrew 101,000 acres from mineral, complete mineral withdrawal. So that activity is no longer allowed on it. And now they have, over a 1 million acre monument proposed in the same geographic area. I think what we're seeing is, if we look at our economy, we look at our banking, I believe these natural resources of the West are being used as collateralization for our national debt to overseas interest in banks.
Yeah, actually, I worked with a whole bunch of people back when things were going down with the Bundy Ranch, and I really started digging into the BLM, and we all found that shell corporation that everybody knows about now that was that's based offshore, Puerto Rico, I think, where they're using this land as debt instrument for bonds, U.S. bonds for debt, borrow from other countries, and we're seeing that being used again and again, and now I think they're trying to enforce ownership of that land, and I don't, it's not just me. I just see thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. I got a Facebook account. I check YouTube. I check the news. I check all these things, and I see an incredible outcry from people over 40, mostly, who came up kind of like, me and you did. I'm 50, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 52, or 51, going on 52. I grew up a little different than a lot of the people the younger groups we see now, the Occupies and all these people starting all this stupid strife and burning down cities. But we see this giant outcry from these people trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and they just can't, and so you got to take, it's like trying to screw a screw into a screw. Sometimes it's just not possible unless you really got to dig into the rabbit hole. And then when you go down that rabbit hole, they start buying you furniture.
Well, if you look at what's going on right now, so you have, it was interesting. I did an interview a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks ago, with the Washington Post. And they live in Washington, D.C. The reporter was out, and they were trying to figure out what the issue is going on here in the West. Why are people so upset with the BLM? And so we started giving them examples of the BLM burning cabins. And the reporter didn't really believe it. He goes, well, why would they do that? I go, that's our question. Why would they do that? That's a mining claim that's been in existence for 30 years. Actually, the cabin now falls under protection of the Antiquities Act. Yet, under the cover of inclement weather, rain or snow, they'll go in and burn it to the ground because some land manager doesn't believe it should be on the landscape. Yet it's that miner's right to have the cabin there. So as we move through the discussion, they were having a hard time understanding why would the government do this. And then as we gave example after example, we realized they are doing it. What was enlightening to me is these issues out of the West are really a West issue. If you go west of the Mississippi, we deal with it. East of the Mississippi, where we have densities of population, they just don't understand it. They don't get it. They don't know why, and it makes no sense to them.
Well, yeah, I have to agree. You know, I live in Kentucky. I live in a rural community in which we're all pretty much farmers, and a lot of moonshiners around here, all that kind of stuff. But you know, I'm up in the mountains, and you know, it's like people don't think anybody's getting this. But you know, I went into this is kind of a random story, but you know, I went into the to the hardware or the lumber yard yesterday, and I went in to get, because I'm building these raised beds, wrapping them around my house, and I'm buying some wood, and we're going to my credit card, and I'm like, well, what happened to the swiper? And he's like, well, they want this thing for the chip. They're just trying to track everybody. And I get to talking to this guy, and it was amazing. This is just some guy that just goes, that you see people are starting to wake up and get aware. They just don't know where to go from there. And he's like, yeah, you know, he's like, they're just trying to track everybody, and if they don't like you, they'll just drag you off into the woods and shoot you. And I'm like, and of course, anybody who knows me, I've been following this from day one in Oregon, and I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? He says, well, gosh, you need to wake up. Have you seen what the heck happened up in Oregon? And I'm like, oh my God. So other people are getting this.
And they are. Talking with the Washington Post guy, you know, I was explaining to him, this is what's going on. He was starting to understand it, but he was having a difficult time accepting it because it just didn't make rational sense to him. And people are waking up, and he asked me an interesting question. He said, well, why do you think people are coming to you? And I said, well, that's pretty simple. Because the media, the mainstream media, the established media, has failed. They used to kind of, in a sense, be the watchdog of government. You know, the R. Murrow days, the Walter Cronkite days, they used to go out and they did investigative, independent reports. They would take up the facts and they would put the facts out there and allow the American people to make a decision. And programs like yourselves and others are shifting to more of the mainstream media because they're more accurate. They cover a broader base. People are more involved with it. And so when you talk about it, and he got a little offended by it, but the reality is true. The reason people come to us, to the Pacific Patriot Network and other groups, is because they've attempted to go through what we are taught to be the proper channels, go to government, file a complaint, and they do nothing. Their action is to take no action. They ignore it. It doesn't stop the injustice. It doesn't stop that individual dealing with the frustration. And then they try and bring attention to it through the media. And as I saw the reaction from that guy on the East Coast, it's incredulous. What do you mean? The government would never do that, but they are. And that's how they're successful at it, because the media doesn't step up and call them on the carpet and hold them accountable. So now we talk about the Patriot movement. And I kind of find it an interesting term in the sense, at what point do we believe we would have a Patriot movement in the United States of America? Why would we have a movement to preserve our freedoms and liberties when we fought and our forefathers fought so hard to establish and protect them? So we now have a term for it. And this is where the mainstream media has absolutely failed, is they haven't held government accountable, and then people got together in groups, they aired the complaints, and they realized, you know, my neighbor down the road at the other mine, or my ranch friend down the road at his ranch, or the timber crew down the road, we're all having the same issues. We all have the same concerns and complaints, and so we've unified. And in that unification, we have a stronger voice, and finally somebody started to listen to us. But it still wasn't through traditional means of redressing grievances of government. It was from taking action, from standing up and going, no, you're not going to do that. The Constitution guarantees these rights. Even though you're talking about administrative rule, you must still be constitutional in nature. You don't get to come in, shut down somebody's mine, take and confiscate all their equipment without due process. That is a constitutional right and guarantee. And so that's where we've gotten. And as you say, people are starting to awaken. You're right. They're noticing this. Lavoy Finnegan being what I call executed, I extensively walked that kill site, and I don't use that word lightly. They did not employ police tactics there. They employed military tactics. That was a classic L-style ambush that they had set up at that roadblock.
Oh, yeah, and it was, I have to agree, it was completely illegal. It's well known, because I was on the air at the time, and I called Lavoy when they were on their way to John Day, and Lavoy was busy driving, so he had Ryan Payne. He took the call, and I'm talking to Ryan. He thought I was a different Nighthawk, and we were shooting this stuff, shooting the shit back and forth, and then he puts Lavoy back on the phone once they got straightened out, and they're driving down the road, and he's going like, well, we're headed up to John Day and all this, and then he goes, oh crap, I gotta go, there's something, and we just got cut off. And I tried to call him over and over again because I just thought we lost signal or something. And then a few hours later, they came out with what happened, and it was wow.
Yeah, they had improved fighting positions, and when I say where the roadblock was established, down from it, they had actually gone up into the tree line. They had cut and trimmed the branches of the trees to give them improved fields of fire and used tree branches as rifle rests.
Yeah, I saw that. Actually, we had Sherry, our reporter that was out there the whole time. She went up there and went and tromped through the snow that day and showed us that, where they had been, there was fresh cut limbs, off of all the trees. And there was also, and she could, I wish to God she got the video, but she explained how there was places in a couple of trees, and she said it looked like they had been digging in the trees. And I'm like, well, hell, I know what those are. Those are boot cuts. Those are what you use to climb a tree and get up to get it in the tree sniper position.
Well, and that's now evident because of the high-angle shot that went through the roof of the truck and blew out the window. As everyone has watched, I'm sure the majority have watched that news conference, it was interesting and disturbing to see how they justified the employment of lethal force. And I started thinking to myself, in Oregon, we had concealed carry rights. We're Second Amendment. So their premise was that because they suspected Lavoy was carrying a weapon, that authorized them to employ lethal force. And I thought about this. Now, in the video, there's no question he was adversarial with them. He was saying, shoot me here, put a bullet in me. But he also said he was just going up to see the sheriff. And he definitely was confrontational, but he never enacted any type of hostile action. He never pulled or brandished a weapon. He never threatened anybody. He never tried to run anybody over the vehicle. He pulled away from the traffic stop, and in doing so, you can hear them shooting at the vehicle. You can hear rounds bouncing off the truck. If you watch the early part of the vehicle when they're first stopped, when Ryan Payne sticks his head and hands out the window and quickly draws them in, that's because he was shot at. That kind of set the tone for where and the direction that was going. They already had some type of plan in place. No hostile action had been perpetuated, yet they initiated it. So as he drives away, they're fired upon, and psychologically in human behavior, you have that fight or flight emotion that kicks in. He accelerated again with arm. Now, you've probably also seen that they claimed, I believe it was 863 feet, that Lavoy could have seen the roadblock. and they engaged him with the rifle rounds, 3 of them, well prior to that. Now, when he was first shot at with lethal force, that's been admitted so far, he had not brandished a weapon, had not tried to hurt, injure, or run over everybody, yet they still fired at him for pulling away from a traffic stop, as they claim.
Well,
there was a gentleman.
Well, usually when they do a traffic stop, it's usually a marked police vehicle, right?
Yes.
You know, these were unmarked. I mean, why, you know, we seen in that video, they said, "Who are you?" And they had to actually say who they were. They never actually said who they were until they said, "Who are you?"
Yes.
And I don't know if you saw it. It's the only viral video I ever did, other than when I had David Fry on the line. Was a video I did in which me and my wife, who is a seamstress, we went over this jacket picture they had with this firearm that was supposedly shoved in the pocket. And, you know, there's Photoshop work going on there. And also I've noticed that, you know, at first they were talking about this 9mm, and then they gave a serial number that tracked back to this stolen firearm, and then it changed. But that did not change until after they cleared the refuge, David Fry and that bunch, where they could go get the firearms that were actually there and then bring those firearms to use as evidence. We never saw any pictures or any kind of evidence until after the fact, after they got them off the refuge, because it was pretty apparent and clear that to anybody that those firearms were left there, because the sheriff at Grant County, who has told me and many others, he told them to come unarmed there. Now, Lavoy Finicum wore a shoulder holster. He wouldn't have shoved it in the inside part. You know, he wouldn't have ripped out the stitching of his jacket pocket and jammed it in there. And quite honestly, looking at the way they showed that in there, he very possibly could have shot himself trying to pull that out. It would have caught the hammer trying to pull that out. And we found all kind of Photoshop, you know, stuff going on there. Of course, I get trolled out on that by a few people, but most people see the same thing I'm seeing. You know, so, you know, the narrative from the FBI just continues to be one big lie. You know, FD lie is all I'm seeing with all this, you know. And, of course, if the FBI lies once, they're always going to lie. I mean, Ruby Ridge, that, you know, lots of lies went on there. Waco,
well, you know what?
Lots of lies. Go ahead.
He initially went into Burns and Harney County. You know, people don't realize we had been in there working on the Hammond situation since September. And we had met with the Hammonds. We had met with Sheriff Ward. Myself and another founder, Brandon Rapola, actually traveled to Eugene. We sat down with the prosecutor, Frank Papagni, and he spent 2.5 hours, brought out the trial exhibits for the Hammonds. So we had been in there in depth, doing due diligence and investigating everything very, very thoroughly. When it all occurred, it became very apparent the sheriff was not going to stand up and protect the Hammonds. He did not understand the Constitution. He did not understand the authority of a county sheriff being the chief law enforcement officer at Clio, and he wasn't going to act upon that. That's where our concern came in, and when we deployed into Harney County and we set up that speed bump, that buffer to slow them down, that was our concern that a Wacoing type action would not take place. Because as we saw with Ruby Ridge, as we saw with Waco, Ruby Ridge, the U.S. Marshals was found at fault. Didn't bring back the ones that were shot and killed. Waco, again, ATF found to be at fault. Didn't bring back the women and children, and we did not want to see that situation occur here in Harney County. In doing that, I don't think the federal authorities can help themselves. If you look at the emails that we've recently obtained, in there they actually speak about the Pacific Patriot Network being in there, and it's inhibited their ability to perform a Waco-style raid. So they were actually, contemplating it. They were thinking about it. those emails show the dysfunction in communication between the state and the county and the FBI. They were not communicating. The county and state officials holed up in the courthouse, and the FBI holed up in the schoolhouse there in Burns. They didn't talk to each other. They were throwing each other under the bus. They were not communicating. They were not allowing people into each other's meetings. There was no communication taking place at all. We were trying to get a mediator in there from the state to moderate the whole thing to a peaceful resolution. But it was interesting because as long as it took, the county, the state, or the federal government never put forth a mediator to resolve that. And I find that very odd. Why would you not try a resolution? I mean, it was an occupation. They went in there, they occupied it peacefully. When they walked in that refuge, everything was open and unlocked on a Saturday at whatever it was, 5 or 6 p.m. I find that very strange also. So they go on to that refuge, they occupied it, and they were making a statement. You know, the PPN did not agree with the way they did it. We actually denounced it, but we understood the message that they were trying to send and the intention they were trying to bring to a land use issue. And, you know, the Constitution allows redress of grievance to government. They allow peaceful assembly. And as you were talking earlier about the violence now taking place in New York City, that never, ever occurred out there in Harney County. They never raised a weapon or hostility to any state, county, or federal official. And the only violence of action we saw was initiated from the government. And in doing so, you know, the FBI, one of the federal top investigating agency of our government, had 5 HRT numbers that participated in a willful cover-up of evidence obstructing an investigation. Now, if you or I had done that, I don't think we'd be speaking over the phone right now. We'd probably be in a holding cell.
Well, yeah, of course.
Those still walk free. And the government shows they have a different standard between kind of an us and them. And that's not right. That's inappropriate. If they obstructed, picked up shells, they need to be removed, suspended, and charged. You know, we're investigating. You know, we have people, if you look at Ammon right now and some of these other folks who are involved in this, they were exercising their constitutional right to free speech. I don't know any of them that have violent convictions, have anything like that on the record. They're peaceful, yet they're being told, or we're being told, they're a danger to society. And so they have to be kept in solitary confinement 23 hours a day. Now, if I think about that, you have people that exercise their freedom of speech, and they're a danger to society, so it's okay, without being convicted, to put them in solitary confinement 23 hours a day. Right now, as we're on this phone, there's violent actions taking place in Arizona and in New York City. And where's the prosecution? Where's the charges? Where is that same type of action with those people that are violent? When we talked with the FBI, we were always met with any law enforcement in Harney County with an excessive show of force, and they actually noted. At one point when we went up and we delivered the articles of resolution to the FBI, there's an email saying we met them with excessive and overwhelming force. And they were long guns, kitted out, and they looked like combat soldiers. And they're supposed to be police. That's concerning in our nation. And I don't think there's any American that wants that on the streets of their community, town, or city.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and, you know, there was a couple of days before that I called Jason Van Tattenow. You know him, right? I know you do.
Yeah.
You've been on on his shows with us over here at Revolution Radio. And I called Jason, and I called, anyway, his boss, and a few other people, and I'm like, listen, guys, I saw a couple of airplanes coming in. This is like this was the weekend before. And I saw two airplanes coming in, and usually when you watch, FlightAware, you don't see airplanes flying really, really close together in the same pattern. And I saw these two, so I got their tail numbers and looked them up, and they belonged to they were a joint owned airplane between Department of Interior and Department of Immigration. And I saw them coming into Boise. So I gave a friend of mine that is a live streamer out there, and I said, hey, can you go check something out for me? I said, there's a plane that's scheduled to land, or a couple of planes that are scheduled to land in the Boise, Idaho airport. Can you go down to the airport and just see what they are, see what's going on? Because I was a little suspicious, because you just don't see planes flying in formation on FlightAware, and I was checking it every day just to see what was going on in the air. So he went down there and just kind of got out in the parking lot and where he could see the airfield, watched them land, and then he reported back to me that several guys got off of an airplane, and then another plane came in. Several of guys got off the airplane again. They all got in a couple of buses and took out, and they were followed by a car carrier type semi that was loaded up with snowmobiles, and they headed off up the highway towards Oregon. Of course he didn't know where they were going. And of course I was asked, why didn't he get video? Well, he said he was a little scared to even try to video, so he just sat in his car and monitored. Because when he got out of the car and went over to the fence with his smartphone to try to get me video, two security asked him what he was doing, and he said, and he said he was just he liked airplanes, and he was wanting to film airplanes landing and taking off, and so he got back in his car and just sat and monitored. So I told everybody that, and then. Interestingly enough, a couple of days later, I know Stuart Rhodes, which was the name I couldn't come up with a minute ago. Stuart Rhodes and Jason and a couple other people called Lavoie and said, I think there might be a problem. Maybe you shouldn't go to John Day, or maybe you should just take the whole pack and move. And I don't know if you saw that video or remember that. It's been put out 9,000 times on YouTube. But after this intel came through, what did we see? Because we've had several people go climb up in there into where all this happened. There's snowmobile tracks everywhere. And of course we had this FBI bunch that is basically the military arm of the FBI. So it's just like things get so curious, curiouser and curiouser, as Alice says. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and we know they were running, I believe it was called an Orion drone. The video that was put out, the drone video that's put out, the camera on the drone costs as much, if not more, than the air vehicle, the drone itself. They were running that out of the Redmond Air Tanker Base. The thing could fly 250 miles and stay airborne for 48 hours and then still return back. Very efficient. That was there. We know they were working out of the Air Tanker Base there. They were inside the hangars. They had employed a tremendous amount of assets. One of the things that I think is interesting is the government response tended to be overwhelming in force. And I think there is a bias and misunderstanding at the upper levels of the concern of American citizens in the West. And we now are starting to stand up and go, wait a minute, these lands have traditionally been used to produce providers and for the economic health of our communities. But people have a right to do that. and they are coming down with such a heavy-handed fist. It's intimidating, and its intent is to scare and threaten people from standing up for the right thing. And that's not perfect. If we look at what happened out there, I was surprised at the amount of resources they poured into Burns and Harney County. The Ammon and his crew and everything, yes, they did have weapons out there, but it was not a brandishing. It was not an overt carrying. There's a majority of them that I never saw with a weapon at all. If anything, it may have been a pistol on the side, which you're in Eastern Oregon. That's very common. Lavoie, he carried a 6-shooter on his right hip. That's all I ever saw the guy with. I never saw him with anything else. And to come in with full tacked out paramilitary law enforcement, I find it kind of disturbing because no violence of action took place. But if you look what's going on in New York City and what's happening right now could turn violent, you're not seeing that same employment of force. And I got to kind of scratch my head. I go, well, why is that? What purpose does that serve? Why do they believe that a rancher is far more dangerous, that's never done any damage, that's never threatened anybody, than what's going on the East Coast right now? It makes no sense.
Well, I mean, I think I have an answer for that. Because what they were doing makes sense. And people can get with that. What we see going on the East Coast, well, actually everywhere right now, especially with Donald Trump running, what we see is this insane confusion and protests that nobody can quite nail down what the hell's going on. The Black Lives Matter or Thug Lives Matter as far as I'm concerned. And because there is just a huge division going on, and we have seen our country with you would have thought that it would have changed over the last 8 years with a black president, but our country is more racially divided than it has been since the 60s. And Martin Luther King would be spinning in his grave right now watching what's going on. Would you not agree?
I look at it, and you're right. I see more racial divide now than I've ever seen in our nation. And, I'm 53. I grew up late 60s, 70s, and I was in Los Angeles when they started the forced busing and integration. But I don't remember the contention and situations that we're seeing in our nation today. And it's perpetuated. There is this racial divide, and I have to step back and go, what is the purpose of that? Because at the end of the day, we're all Americans. I mean, when I was in the Army, you weren't black, white, or yellow. You were a soldier. Didn't care about your color. You're a troop. And we're coming out and we're seeing this division, and it seems to be supported by the administration and policy. And I have to wonder, is that intentional to stop unity? The most dangerous thing is if the people unify together and go, time out, wait a minute, this is not how we want our government to behave. This is not the value of Americans.
Well, no, it isn't. Now, you can't see this, but I'm running a little video on the side for people to see, and there's a reason I'm running this video. It's these two farmers, and what they're doing is they're feeding pigs, and the pigs know dinner's coming, and they're all lined up along the fence line, being perfect little angels, just waiting for dinner to come. And they bring the dinner in, and all the pigs are eating, and they're all happy. And then they'll go back to do whatever pigs do, or whatever sheep do, or whatever cows do, or whatever animals do. We're being treated like animals, and they're using the welfare system. And it's like, I told this story yesterday. You know, I'm getting ready to do my taxes. Before I was even allowed to get started doing my taxes for the year, I had to spend literally an hour going through seeing if I was eligible for some kind of welfare. I don't need welfare. I have no interest in any kind of welfare. I don't need food stamps. I'm fine. But I had to spend an hour in order to do my taxes, which they were going to charge me because it's small business and farm. They're going to charge, you know, they want to charge me $70 to do my taxes. But yeah, I had to go through all that for an hour. By the time I got done with that, I didn't want to work on my taxes anymore. So I filed an extension and figured I'd get at it next week. I mean, what the hell is going on?
Well, and that's, you know, I guess it comes down to dependency on the state. If people are dependent upon the state has control. And
exactly.
I don't know how they believe Americans, being as independent as Americans are, that cherish their freedoms, their liberties, their constitutional rights, they believe they can move Americans to dependency. Because at the end of the day, you will always have what I believe to be the majority that will go, no, I'm okay. Just like you said, I don't need it. Leave me alone. And that's what people want. They want to live their lives peacefully and be left alone with a minimal amount of government intrusion. If you want to go out and work on a farm, if you want to go live in a city, if you want to cut timber or dig rocks out of the ground in your pursuit of happiness, that's your right. And you should be left alone for doing it. You know, if you look at some of the government, and we do need government, we have to have reasonable government to maintain civil order, protection of the people, certain processes. That's always going to be a necessity. But when they take a right and sell it back to you as a license, they're still taking a right. What a lot of people don't realize in Oregon, you're only required to have a driver's license if you are conducting operations for hire. You're being paid or compensated to drive. That requires an Oregon driver's license. If you are traveling to and from work, school, or whatever, nope, not required to have one. It's actually a statute on the books. But the state conditions you that everyone must have one because they get paid $60 per license. It's a revenue generator. I don't know the direction we're headed, but when we have more and more dependency on the state and less dependency, less individual freedoms, less individual prosperity, the end result's never going to be good. I mean, we've seen these examples around the world through history, and they fail. You know, it tends to be more of a socialistic approach. Look today, right now, as you and I are talking, in Venezuela, a socialistic country, they are having riots because there's no food in the markets. It is collapsing. The socialist experiment has failed. Yet we have a politician running for president that believes those possibilities and positions are justifiable. The guy never worked or had a full-time paying job until he was 40. And the only job he's had has always been provided by the government.
Which candidate?
Sanders, Bernie Sanders.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I was just making sure. I'm a Trump supporter, so I'm a Trump supporter because he's not establishment, but I don't trust any of them anyway. So,
well, if you look at the situation, he believes he should take from the prosperous and give to the less fortunate. And I have an example given to me. It was running around the web for a bit. You have three brothers, and all three brothers are carpenters. They only get paid $25 an hour. One brother works 20 hours a week because he wants to enjoy his time, and his wife doesn't work. The middle brother works 40 hours a week, and his wife only works 20 hours a week. and the other brother works 60 hours a week, and his wife works full time. And they save their money. Well, they all buy houses of equal value on the same road, and they decide they want to put up a gate. And the gate's going to be $10,000. So the brother that's working 60 hours a week and his wife's working full time will go, well, that's easy. We're each 10 grand apiece. Well, the brother who's only worked 20 hours a week and his wife doesn't work goes, that's not fair. You have more money than I do. And expects him to pay more than him. And that's the problem. One guy chose to work hard, invest his time, all of them equal skill set. One worked harder than the other, and when it came down the road to bear equal responsibility, he goes, wait, you should pay more than me because I don't have it. That's not fair, and that's not right. But that's how socialism works.
Well, yeah, of course. Hold on. I'm going to add rancher Tom Davis in Harney County is down from his horse farm. I'm going to add him, so you'll probably hear some ringing, okay? You there? You still there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, anyway. Well, I went and screwed up my call. Hold on a second. He's also going to join us. You know Tom Davis?
I may have met him.
All right, I think what happens, we got cut up a little bit, so I'll go ahead and add him in, and we'll just kind of roll on.
Been forwarded to an.
Well, apparently has it. Anyway, go ahead and continue, Joe. He said he was down off the mountain, so I thought he was available. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I mean, look at things, and I think that's one of the big issues we're having in the West now, is you have people, ranchers, that want to work, they want to produce, but they're being told by the government entities they can't. BLM recently, I think it was about a week and a half ago, a federal judge, which is actually a bright ray of hope, found BLM willfully conspired to deny a rancher his grazing allotments because he was asserting his water rights that had been passed down for 4 or 5 generations. And they were punitive in their actions by not allowing him grazing rights. And they actually went and solicited them to somebody else who had no authority to do. And the court came down, and the court said that they had conspired against this rancher to do that. Now, my question is, at what point does the court take the next step, and those employees within the agency that did that are arrested and charged with conspiracy? But we never seem to get to that point. They seem to conduct this action, and then they get a slap on the wrist like you should not have done that, even though they've willfully broken the law. I mean, where are the prosecutors to hold them accountable? They're very quick to hold a rancher or a patriot or a common citizen accountable, but once within the federal agencies, they're very, very reluctant to do so, and they just don't seem to do it.
Well,
and
yeah, exactly, and it seems like conspiracy is, every charge involved continues to be conspiracy of this, conspiracy of that. I just call that the pre-crime mentality, and I'm sure you would agree. But, conspiracy did what? Yesterday, I guess they released Pete Santilli, not to be free, but to head on down to Las Vegas. They got Cliven Bundy in chains, treating him like It's just ridiculous. This whole thing is ridiculous. You know, why did we not see any of this kind of action after Ferguson or Baltimore or any of the other things that happened? LA riots. We saw none of this.
No, you're right. And this is that heavy handed. When you talk about conspiracy, we were talking to attorneys, and they were painting this very broad brush. They conspired to prevent a federal official in the performance of their official duties. Now, my understanding is no federal employee ever attempted to go out to the refuge. They never interacted with any federal employee at the refuge. So what they're saying is a public refuge that is posted open from sunrise to sunset. The simple presence of them was enough to intimidate those people from coming out and doing their jobs. They never attempted to go do their jobs. They were never denied the opportunity to go do their jobs. But yet, these individuals are being charged with conspiracy to prevent. So, how is it now when a group of patriots shows up, say at the courthouse in Eugene, to protest Judge Aiken's decision to send the Hammonds back to prison, does that mean we could all be charged with conspiracy to prevent a federal official in the performance of their duties as Judge Aiken decides not to come into work that day because we've exercised our constitutional right to peaceful assembly and redress grievance to government?
Well, actually, you know, not to interrupt you completely, but, you know, these charges are actually pretty much the same as getting in the way of a cop car and an ambulance driving down the road if you don't hear the siren and pull off to the side.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I was told is when you say conspiracy, the preponderance of evidence the prosecution has to present is far less than if you said one of them had broken or vandalized or stolen something. You would have to prove without a reasonable doubt that they had done that type of a crime specifically. But when you say conspiracy, all you have to do is just show they thought about it. I mean, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find an American at some point that was pissed off with the government, like, I'm not going to pay my taxes, they asked for too much money. Or those idiots, they should be run out of office. You know, just because somebody thinks about it, that's now a conspiracy. And that's what they're doing. They're painting all this broad brush. And
Well, you know, not only that, if you go to FBI.gov/Portland and go in and look at the press releases between a couple of the Lavoie and everybody else's stuff, you'll see where they sentenced a guy to several years in prison over a Facebook post.
Yeah, how does that happen? How does that happen when someone exercises their First Amendment right to go to prison for a Facebook post? What was the gentleman that was out in front of the courthouse and he was handing out leaflets that spoke and educated on jury nullification, and they arrested him and charged him with obstruction? He is handing out information and charged with obstruction. How does that happen?
You tell me. I don't know. It just seems to happen over and over again, but only to people like us. And I don't mean to make that sound like, people are going to, he means only white people. Well, I'm not white. And I'm not black. My father was Syrian. My mother was Irish and American Indian. So I'm not really considered, I probably wouldn't really be considered white. It doesn't matter. I'm just a human being, and I have opinions just like you do and everybody else does. And, that always seems to be the contention is if, we have this chat room that goes on over here at over here on our live stream. And people want to pick apart everything. It's like if you misspell something, that's a huge thing. Or if you don't agree 100% with somebody else, that's a huge thing. How could we possibly get together when people cannot even get over, even grammar Nazis? Come on. You know what I'm saying?
I kind of call the keyboard warrior phenomenon. People want to be part of something, and with the internet, technology, blogs, chat rooms, they get on there and they run and voice their opinion. And we've lost the ability to communicate. And a lot of times when people are doing that, that's good, but be constructive about it. Division in the Patriot movement serves no purpose at all. It just ensures that those that are trying to remove constitutional protected rights and liberties win. Unity and strength changes that. And until people are willing to come together and look and overlook the pettiness and that foolishness, the division is what they want. And I'm sure the federal government's smart enough to put in people to stir emotions and be provocateurs and try and cause division. It's what they do. They think they're clever about it. But when good Americans fall for it, it's not a good thing. It says we the people, it doesn't say we the government. And I think what we're looking at is you have individuals that have reached such a strong control, they don't want to give it up. It's a power thing. But Americans, if they want to maintain their freedoms and liberties, I had the opportunity and benefit to travel to countries around the world and work in a variety of things. And each time I come back to my country, America, it's a wonderful, beautiful place. You cannot take our freedoms and our liberties for granted, and they have to be preserved. We can't sit idly by and think someone's going to do it for us. And it's going to be that time where eventually people don't step up, and then it's lost, and opportunity won't come back. It's time now to stand up and start making your voices heard. Make your voices heard in how you choose political candidates. Make your voices heard in your county commission, your county council, your school board meetings. Let them know what the values of your community are and stand for it. Don't just wait for someone else to do it, because if you're waiting, it's not getting done. And people should never be fearful of standing up for a constitutional protected right or liberty.
All right. Well, that is, I'll tell you what, Joe, I want to have you on as much as you'll be on. You have a lot of good things to say, and you're probably the best guest I've ever had. I was hoping Adrian Sewell would join us. I lost his number in a file text. He wants to come in, and I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm trying to bring him in, and I can't bring him in because I don't have his number. Don't say it over here. I know you know it, but so I'm waiting on him to respond to me on Facebook in some way, and he doesn't seem like a big Facebook guy. So, and Jason is still on the mountain doing training. But I want to thank you very much for joining us, and I'd like to bring you back on a weekly basis if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, do that. I have to get because there's a lot of things like the Pacific Patriot Network done out here. There's been an awakening, you said, and people are looking for organization, they're looking for leadership, they're looking for a way to get involved. And it's hard because we are so flooded with, can I get help? This is my situation.
Right.
It's not like the occasional phone call or email. It's every week. And this isn't just a small issue. This is a large systemic problem.
Oh yeah, I get 1,000 emails a day that I go through, Some of them don't mean anything. Some of them end up in my spam, and it does get overwhelming. So now I'm going to move in. I'm going to ask you a couple of hard questions that might be, guys don't think I'm just trying to set anybody up. But what I'm trying to do, I want to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, they're getting ready to pass out a bunch of new indictments. All right? And there were a lot of people out there taking pictures of you. And there are a few in which you have a gun. And it seems that they just want to go after everybody that had a gun in Oregon or a gun at the Bundy Ranch, even though at the Bundy Ranch, it's private property. You could walk around with your, excuse my language, but your dick flopped over your shoulder. Doesn't matter. Is that worrying you at all or not?
No, because what we've always done with the PPN is we've always done everything lawfully. We've remained within the law. People had weapons. People have concealed weapons issued by the state of Oregon, by the local sheriffs, and you conduct yourselves lawfully. And, we are a nation of laws. We have to respect the laws. And when you think about what's going on here, it's not that we are acting unlawfully. It's we are responding to the unlawful and illegal actions of federal agencies. And that same agency is now utilizing and will the prosecutors to try and gain the upper ground. I believe when the majority of these trials take place, they're going to be found not guilty. We're seeing states now enter into jury nullification. And I think there's a point here, and this is a question I put out. These prosecutors, who's watching them? Who is conducting the oversight of them? How and where are their accountability for malicious prosecutions? Where's that? And the only way that's going to happen, Lincoln stated, the people are the masters of Congress and the courts. And if we, the people, sit idly by and we allow the courts to steamroll this stuff, we have failed our responsibility as Americans. It's our responsibility to take and make the time to write a letter, send an email, make a phone call, or show up at a protest or support rally. Strength in numbers. The one thing the prosecutor told me, online petitions take notice. They notice online petitions. And if they see people starting to assemble and unify for a cause, it causes them concern. So, we have done everything legally and lawfully. We never circumvented the law. And what we did is we walked up directly and forthright and stated our position, stated where we are and why we were there. We have that right to do that.
Yeah, we definitely do. Okay, so next question. All right, so you know Brandon Curtis pretty well, right? Did you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so, I used to be able to call Brandon Curtis. He's not returning my calls anymore. I was trying to bring him in on this. I mean, is the dude okay? I mean, we're not hearing anything, and it seems like a lot of people are really dragging him through the mud right now. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, Brandon, you have to, he has all the founders and business opportunities. We do all of it, and these types of operations chew up a tremendous amount of time.
Okay, hey, Joe, I need you to start over. Everything you said for the last about 14 seconds went went dead. So
Oh, I said no. Brandon Curtis is fine. And, we all, in our personal lives, have responsibilities. So with these operations that occur, they chew up a tremendous amount of time and resources. So when we all are able to return back to our personal lives, you're in major catch-up mode. When people say they're dragging him through the mud, I would be very suspect of that. Anyone that's willing to criticize somebody for standing up for somebody and trying to protect a right, and they're going to criticize, they're a false patriot. They're not true in nature. They're either upset, a small, cowardly person, or they're not looking at the big picture. They're supporting the federal government in its agenda.
All right, yeah, I must agree. That was just, I just wanted to get your short opinion on that because, I don't even know why he won't answer my calls anymore. I don't know. Maybe he's just busy, So.
During 3 or 4 times a day, in the last week and a half, I heard from him once through a text 2 days ago. Not overly concerning to me. I know he's very busy catching up.
All right, so there you go, folks. So all the people, talking shit and dragging, him through the mud is, that's why. He's busy. Some of us are busy out here. It's like, I'm able to do this every day right now for 4 or 5 hours because we're still waiting for spring to come. But this isn't going to be endless because, I got a farm to run and, in a few, I'd say in a week or 2, I'm not going to be able to do this every day. I'm going to be busy doing farm stuff. And, because we all have our personal lives to deal with. People forget that we have personal lives that we do. Things that we do.
What you need to understand is he had 4 of his guys in the Idaho 3% were arrested. And I believe 2 of them were senior leaderships. So he is working with that situation and their families. I mean, people have to understand is Eric Parker was arrested. Well, Eric Parker's earning ability to provide for his family, pay his mortgage, put food on the table ended. His family still has to be taken care of. And I've seen a lot of people wanting to donate to legal funds, wanting to put money in their bank accounts while they're incarcerated, but I haven't seen much going on. How are the families surviving? How are the families putting food on the table? How are the families covering their bills and paying the mortgage? And I know Brandon Curtis has been focused on making sure the Idaho 3%ers that were arrested for staking a stand in Bunday, their families are being taken care of. So if they don't return your phone call right away, you might want to put that on the back burner and think about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's fine. It's not me being upset. It's just listening to all these other people out there in the way, Brandon Curtis ain't talking to anybody, dragging through the mud. I'm not dragging him through the mud. Just there's a lot of things going on that you get all this internet community trying to create some kind of hidden agenda or whatever. So, that's all I was saying, dude.
No, I and that's where I talk about those that are willing to criticize and critique because false patriots. They create a problem where none exists rather than providing a solution and helping. And that's the division. That serves no purpose for anybody at all.
Exactly. All right, Joe, I want to thank you for your time. And I'd like to get you back here on a regular basis if you're okay with that, and just keep as this goes on. And I have a feeling this is going to be a really hot summer. What do you think? I'm not talking about the sun.
I'm a little fearful of that. I think you're right. I'm just listening to the rumblings, and as you talked earlier in the program, there's awakening taking place, and people are starting to realize there's help out there. There are individuals that are willing to leave their lives, come and stand in protection of their constitutional right. I think in our nation we're at a point where we have to do that. Those that currently hold the power, the current administration, they've got some different vision for America. And I don't believe that vision is one that relishes and protects the individual rights and liberties. The removal of access to our public lands for responsible use of those natural resources, which create jobs, create economy, and make America strong, is being removed by a small elitist group in D.C. People need to remember that when they go to the polls this year and vote. They need to understand the voting record and what their elected representative in D.C. has actually done. They need to do more than name recognition. They actually need to look at the record of what they support and what they don't support. And if that representative from wherever you are in America is not a staunch supporter of your freedoms, your rights, and your liberties, they do not deserve, nor should they return as your representative. But it takes time and it takes education. And if Americans don't start paying attention, I don't know what 2017 is going to look like for our nation.
Yeah, and here's the question I have for you. We have two choices for president right now. It's apparently it's pretty clear it's going to be a ticket between Hillary, which I can't understand why anybody would vote for that crazy cunt. Excuse my language. And Donald Trump, who is, I like Donald, but he's still the same narcissistic lunatic that he's always been, and it's trying to pick the cleanest turd out of a bucket. But I see, if Donald Trump comes into office and he does not do what he has been saying that he's going to do, the things that he keeps saying he's going to fix, if he doesn't do that, do you not think there is going to be a very nasty and very violent revolution across this country? I mean, in a wave that makes Occupy Ferguson and Baltimore look like, a couple of firecrackers.
People talk about revolution, and I think today that is not based on philosophical ideas. That will only happen in America when they can no longer turn on their smartphones, watch their satellite TV, or pick up their bag of snack chips from the store.
Well, what I'm saying is, if he becomes president and he doesn't do what he keeps saying to do, is the point I was trying to make. If he doesn't do what he said he's going to do, do you not think that is going to be the revolutionary spark point?
I don't know. As I've been involved and looked at things, Americans are pretty complacent. And I guess my point earlier is they're only going to get agitated when you take away their comfort items. And if you look at, and my reasoning kind of for saying that is you brought up Hillary. Here is the former Secretary of State that has been found to have kept classified American material on her personal server. and she is walking free. Now, I did work in Afghanistan. We handled confidential and classified documents in our work. And if you or I or anybody had handled classified material in that manner, we would, in this phone conversation, we would be in prison. So when you talk about the spark, how can Americans sit by and tolerate the former Secretary of State openly admitting that she never kept classified? The investigation found that she did keep classified material in violation of a number of federal laws and still walks free. So if we're not putting a criminal in prison for that, what are we doing?
I don't know. You tell me.
I mean, that's the thing. Where's the outrage from America about her putting our security at stake? Her keeping classified documents on her personal server put American lives at risk, put our nation's security at risk when she was arrogant enough to circumvent security document protocols. And it makes no sense. We, as Americans, are like, oh, okay, no one's done anything about it, so I guess it's not that serious. We should be screaming and yelling and demanding the Department of Justice charge and indict. But, hey, it's an election year, and it's not happening. Do you not think that's coming out of the current administration? There's probably been direction.
Well, yeah, I mean, even if she gets elected, her entire presidency will be nothing but, like what happened with Bill Clinton. It'll be nothing but this after that, after this, after that. And I still find it rather odd that the United States paid more money to investigate Bill Clinton's blowjob than, excuse my language, but still, it's true. They spent more money investigating Bill Clinton's blowjob than the 9/11 Commission.
Yeah. I mean, you said something interesting, is she's elected president. Think about the Americans that would vote for her knowing she committed a crime. Is that not an endorsement of lawless behavior?
Well, of course it is.
So where's the education of those Americans? Where do they care about their nation that they're willing to put really a criminal in the White House? What does that say about us as a people? What does that say that we don't care or have enough respect for ourselves individually, our nation, to put that type of representation in the White House?
Well, I don't think anybody in their right mind would elect her anyway. And then we got the left wing, which is, they kind of get her, but, they want to vote for Bernie, which is, okay, give everything to everybody for free. Give me a break. Come on. I mean, seriously? Honestly, I in my opinion, I do not understand why some people hate people who work their ass off and make some money so bad. I mean, you can get your ass out of bed and go to get a job and do some work. I don't live uncomfortably, but I'm not rich. But I have worked my ass off all my life. I have everything I need. There's nothing, unless I just want to buy something that is that I don't need, which is extremely not often. But I got everything I need. I grow my own food, or most of it, and can it and all that kind of stuff. I could sit here I could sit here literally on my ass and do nothing for 3 years and never go to the grocery store unless I need milk, eggs, or bread. And I can make my own bread, and I got enough flour for that. But, quite honestly, who else does that? Not many people. And so we're all trying to wake people up and get people organized, get people to try to move in some kind of forward movement to, not just to wake up, but to get out of bed. That's my thing. Not just wake up, but get out of bed. There is an adage that goes with this. All right. So you can take a carrot and put it in boiling water. And the carrot goes into boiling water hard. And when it comes out of the boiling water, it is soft. You can take an egg and drop it into boiling water. When it goes into the boiling water, it is fragile. When it comes out of the boiling water, it is hard. When you put a coffee bean into boiling water, it changes the water itself. And we really need to start being the coffee bean of the change. Because if we don't do that soon and now, it's going to be too damn late. Because we as a people, and not just in America, but all over the world, are just now starting to wake up into a situation and realizing this situation. And it's almost freaking too late. Go ahead.
No, I mean, you're right. And it's awakening, but it's happening. People are realizing it. You can look through history, you can look at different nations and regimes around the world, and you can see the same thing taking place. Americans tend to have a little bit of an arrogance that we'll be okay here. It will never happen to us. And then we had 9/11. That was a little bit of an awakening and worked for a couple, 3 years, but we're back at it again. If we look at Russia, the Soviet Union fractured and fell. As strong as they were, the Cold War years, all that took place. So Rome fell. It's no longer around. Things change. And I think we're seeing that period of change in our nation that is not one for the positive. It would be one that we will no longer recognize what our country used to be, what our founders intended it to be. And if we look and study the writings of our founding fathers, and we look at their vision, and I talk about vision specifically because they had an idea. America is still a grand experiment. We are a nation, a democratic republic. We protect the individual right. We're not ruled by the mob, and that protection of the individual right protects all of our rights. But if we allow that to slip away, we allow that to be abused and taken away from us incrementally, not overnight, not a huge bite, but slowly, one day we wake up and we're all going to scratch our head and go, what happened? Well, we're well down that path now, and people are starting to wake up, but that has to continue. And I will have people say, well, I'm fearful of getting on a list. I'm fearful of doing this. What are you fearful of?
Well, yeah, as I keep saying, waking up is fine, but you got to get out of bed and do something.
Exactly. And if you're going to have fear stop you, then you've already lost. You have already accepted the inevitable that may come down the pike. But if you don't want your freedoms lost, you want to live your life as you choose to live, you got to get out of bed, you got to get out and do something. And if you don't do it, then you're going to, you reap what you sow. You'll have to deal with what comes. Because when you have to deal with it, at that point it's too late. It'll be far harder to turn it around and stop it than if people started getting involved now and making their voices heard.
All right. Yeah, I must agree. All right, Joe. I'm going to go off air now. I want to thank you for calling. I want to thank you for joining me. I had a bunch of other people that were supposed to come in, and they all stood me up. But that happens.
Yeah.
But honestly, you did it all, and we really didn't need the other people. And I would like to schedule, if you have the time and opportunity, a weekly show with you if you can.
Sure. Let's just move forward here.
All right. I sent you a friend request on Facebook. It looks like you don't use it a lot, but it is there. And
Okay.
so anyway, give me an ad, and when I get ready to do this again, we'll get going. Okay.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, no problem, man. This was an amazing show, and the listeners feel the same.
Okay.
All right. Good night. Good night, sir. You have a good night.
Sure.
Bye. All right. Well, you heard it here. I had a whole bunch of people lined up. They all stood me up. Oh, well, shit happens. But Joe Rice was here, and I hope you guys got the gist of that. Actually, we didn't need all the other people. And quite honestly, it's time, as I said, to, getting woke up is one thing, but you got to get out of bed and do something. And you can do it local. You don't have to do some kind of national crazy thing. Go do things local. I told a story about me being at the over at the lumberyard the other day. I was really taken aback about somebody that said what they said to me, and I was like, oh my God, somebody else gets it.
Not ever occupy a position of authority.
All right, I was looking for Adrian
Now,
Sully, never called in.
Fortunately
but I'm
for
going to
me,
go ahead.
there is a very...
I'm going to go ahead and bring this up and turn on the audio and wait and see if we get any calls from there. Here you go.
There is tremendous pressure inside the political process to make sure that the voters stay aligned inside either the Democrat or Republican parties. Why? Because both of those parties have been captured by special interests. And those special interests are, quite frankly, the antithesis of the interests of the people. And so therefore, for example, if people in the United States care about education, but unfortunately there's a banker that gets in between the student and the student's ability to go to school, if they care about health care, there's the insurance industry that gets in between the patient and the doctor who is seeking to provide care. And so we have all of these special interests that have positioned themselves in between the political decision makers and the people themselves. The process now is more responsive to those special interests than it is to the values and the wishes of the American people. When I first went to Congress, I did not go to Congress to pay particular attention to any area outside of the black community that I represented that was in need, and of course U.S. Africa policy, which was abhorrent and unfortunately still is. But what I ran into, I bumped into at almost every turn were these special interests. And there's no more special interest that has any more influence than the pro-Israel lobby. And so then when I did outreach, for example, to the Muslim community in the United States, I bumped into the pro-Israel lobby, which of course does not want to have to contend with a politicized Muslim community, which is as large as and is as wealthy as the pro-Israel lobby is in the United States. So yes, I first-handedly and also frontally was assaulted by the presence of the pro-Israel lobby to such an extent.
Physically assaulted?
Well, politically assaulted, to such an extent that my father had to ask the question publicly, what does Stone Mountain, Georgia have to do with Israel? What I was doing was servicing the needs of my constituents. And I was not allowed to do that because I did not toe the line on U.S. policy for Israel.
What line is that they wanted? Were you told directly that you had to toe a line, or explain that to me?
Well, every candidate for Congress at that time had a pledge. They were given a pledge to sign. And I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city, the military superiority of Israel.
American Congress people have to sign this pledge.
Yes, you sign the pledge. If you don't sign the pledge, you don't get money. So, for example, it was almost like water torture for me. My parents observed this. I would get a call, and the person on the other end of the phone would say, I want to do a fundraiser for you. And then we would get into the planning. I would get really excited because, of course, you have to have money in order to run a campaign. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the planning, they would say, did you sign the pledge? And then I would say, no, I didn't sign the pledge. And then my fundraiser would go kaput. I made it public. This is probably nobody had said anything about it. But I made it public, and then, the excuse was, well, those were just overzealous advocates for Israel. So then the tactic changed. And but this is what is done for 535 members of the United States Congress. 100 senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives have to now write a paragraph, which basically says the same thing. So it's not a pledge, but it's a paragraph, and you post it, and, there are these forums you have to go to at the synagogues or whatever. And then, if you don't perform appropriately, then you don't get money to run your campaign. The problem is that it requires an awful lot of money to run a campaign. And whether it's a woman's organization, an environmental organization, people can read about this on the internet if they're interested. If you go to
forwarded to an automated voice.
Gruff. these people all set up for the show, and now none of them are answering the damn phones. Oh well. Shit happens.
Garden Club of New Jersey, it was the activists who were associated with AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Well, the district that I initially represented in Congress, I represented so many districts because redistricting was a tool that was used to target me, to eliminate me from the Congress. But the district that initially sent me there was a district that was comprised of rural blacks in the black belt of Georgia. These are people who have not had access to equal opportunity at all. The district was challenged in the Supreme Court, and with the assistance of the Anti-Defamation League, the district was dismantled. It generally takes about $250,000 minimum to take a case from filing up to the Supreme Court. And the people who filed the lawsuit to dismantle they challenged my ability to represent the people of that particular district.
Who were these people?
Well, actually, interestingly, there were 5 white citizens, one of whom had been the white male candidate that I defeated in the Democratic primary. And they were aided and abetted by the Anti-Defamation League. And when the case arrived at the Supreme Court, interestingly, on the same day as an environmental case, the Spotted Owl case, the Supreme Court decided that the habitat for the spotted owl should be protected, but that the black voters in that district could have no protection. And so the district was dismantled. Well, I have, because of the notoriety about me telling my story, and then, of course, the public positions that I've taken supporting the human rights aspirations, the legitimate rights and the aspirations of the Palestinian people, I have...
All right, I'm going to cut this now and then come back because I want the Joe Rice interview in its own unfettered way. I'll go probably clean the this off of the end of it and repost it anyway. But so anyway, stand by. We'll be back in about 5 minutes and start taking calls. So don't get lost. We're going to start taking calls. You got something to say? You can call in and say it.